Revenge consumes rational thought, turning calculated minds toward dangerous extremes. These 6 cases show how the pursuit of personal justice led to fatal miscalculations, each shaped by choices that transformed grievance into tragedy. It was March 15, 2013, in a residential neighborhood in a mid-sized Pacific Northwest city. Morning fog settled low over narrow streets, while delivery trucks began their usual routes. The houses sat close together, leaving most residents aware of one another's routines, disputes, and minor tensions that accumulated over time. Zach Brown, 29, was a delivery rider whose supervisors described him as punctual and polite. He often helped elderly customers with heavier boxes and accepted the occasional snack left for drivers. His route regularly included a row of older homes where he had become familiar with the residents' habits. In February, he had filed a formal workplace report stating that a customer had yelled at him, blocked his exit, and aggressively accused him of damaging her property. The report identified the customer as 35-year-old Yana Smith. According to investigators, the two had no further direct interaction after the complaint, but Yana remained angry. Neighbors later said she spoke often about people causing problems on the street and had been fixated on the delivery rider who filed a complaint against her. The tension stayed unnoticed by most households. In the early morning hours of March 15th, Yana prepared a batch of chocolate chip cookies using ethylene glycol from an older antifreeze container she kept in her garage. The container lacked bittering agents, making the taste difficult to detect once mixed with sugar and dough. She baked the cookies, arranged them in a decorative tin, and left them on her porch with a small handwritten note implying appreciation for delivery personnel. Investigators later concluded the setup was intended to look like a harmless gesture while targeting Zach during his scheduled stop. Doorbell footage from nearby homes recorded Zach walking toward Yana's front steps shortly after 9 a.m. He paused, read the note, and took several cookies. Cameras showed him eating one as he walked back to his truck. Ethylene glycol's sweetness masked any warning signs, and he continued his route normally. By late evening, Zach felt unusually fatigued, which he assumed was related to long hours and limited rest. Over the next day, he developed nausea, dizziness, and difficulty concentrating. When his confusion worsened, his roommate drove him to the hospital. Emergency staff noted rapid metabolic acidosis and early kidney impairment. Toxicology screening identified ethylene glycol metabolites, prompting immediate treatment, but he had already entered the second stage of poisoning. Despite dialysis and supportive care, Zach's condition deteriorated into organ failure. He died 5 days after ingesting the cookies. Investigators recovered the tin from Yana's porch, and laboratory testing confirmed the presence of ethylene glycol. A search of her property revealed a partially empty antifreeze container with chemical markers matching those found in Zach's blood. Digital records verified that she knew his scheduled delivery times, and her prior confrontation with him established a clear retaliatory motive. The medical examiner listed kidney failure due to ethylene glycol toxicity as the cause of death. Detectives concluded the poisoning was deliberate and directly linked to Yana's anger over the complaint filed weeks earlier. She was arrested and later convicted of second-degree murder. It was July 22, 2023, on Interstate 84 near Portland, Oregon, where weekend traffic moved steadily toward recreation areas east of the city. Afternoon sun reflected sharply off windshields as vehicles merged into elevated highway sections that passed over residential neighborhoods and commercial blocks below. Xavier Lewis, 45, had a documented history of workplace disputes and prior road rage citations. Neighbors described him as someone who carried resentment towards small frustrations and reacted strongly when he felt challenged. Driving logs confirmed that he frequently traveled through that highway corridor during weekend traffic. Earlier that afternoon, the Hernandez family, Jonathan and Melinda, both 30, along with their children, Luis, 15, and Jasmine, 10, stopped at a gas station along Northeast Halsey Street before continuing their trip. Witness statements and store surveillance later documented the interaction that preceded the attack. As the family exited their vehicle, Xavier pulled into the lot at a higher speed than necessary, passing close to Jasmine as she stepped out of the back seat. Jonathan reacted instinctively, raising his voice and telling Xavier to slow down. Several customers turned toward the noise, and Xavier's response was visibly agitated. Jonathan ended the confrontation by guiding his daughter toward the pump area, while witnesses saw Xavier lingering near his vehicle, staring at the family before leaving the lot moments later. Investigators later determined that Xavier left the gas station behind the family's vehicle and merged onto Interstate 84 roughly 1 minute after they did. Traffic slowed as multiple lanes funneled toward a busy merge point. Witnesses described Xavier weaving through lanes and tailgating the Hernandez family specifically, maintaining close distance for several miles. Jonathan continued driving steadily in the right lane while Melinda monitored the children in the back seat. 2 miles past the merge, highway cameras recorded Xavier accelerating around the family's SUV, moving ahead of them before taking an off-ramp toward a local neighborhood overpass. Surveillance from a nearby business showed him parking illegally on the shoulder of the bridge and walking toward the railing. Footage captured him retrieving a 15-pound concrete fragment left from previous maintenance work. Investigators later confirmed he positioned himself at the point where he could see vehicles traveling beneath the overpass. Traffic cameras showed a lone figure at the railing moments before the Hernandez family's SUV passed under the span. A dash camera from another driver recorded the fragment falling, striking the center of the windshield with enough force to push glass inward. The impact incapacitated Jonathan instantly, causing the SUV to veer left across the median into oncoming traffic. The vehicle collided with a pickup truck before being struck again in secondary impact as other drivers attempted to stop. Emergency responders reached the scene within minutes, but found all 4 members of the Hernandez family had sustained fatal injuries. Surviving motorists described the crash sequence and provided consistent accounts of the vehicle Xavier had been driving earlier. Investigators recovered the concrete fragment from inside the wrecked SUV. Chemical analysis matched it to debris on the overpass shoulder. Cell tower data placed Xavier's phone at the location at the exact time of the incident, and witness identifications from both the gas station and nearby businesses confirmed his presence along the full timeline. The medical examiner listed impact trauma as the cause of death for all 4 victims. Detectives concluded the attack was deliberate, driven by rage following the gas station confrontation. Xavier was arrested and charged with 4 counts of second-degree murder. It was October 14, 2023, at a house party near a large college campus in southern Arizona, where students gathered to celebrate the basketball team's recent victory. The host's residence featured multiple rooms where different groups socialized, creating an environment where individual interactions often went unnoticed among the crowd of approximately 50 attendees. Devin Jones, 20, played forward for the university basketball team and had a documented pattern of confrontational behavior. Coaches noted multiple incidents where frustration affected his conduct. Friends described him as highly competitive and resentful when teammates received more attention. Eric Garcia, 20, was the team's starting point guard and had gained recent visibility after several high-performing games. Teammates recognized his skill, but said he often discussed achievements in ways that created tension. Social media analysis later showed frequent posts highlighting personal accolades. Team staff considered him essential to their season, despite concerns about interpersonal strain. Tension between the two had been building for weeks after Eric received increased media coverage. Multiple teammates later stated that Devin made repeated remarks about the imbalance of recognition. The friction intensified when Eric made dismissive comments during a team meeting. Witnesses said Devin's attitude shifted noticeably in the days leading to the party. Home surveillance timestamps showed guests arriving throughout the evening. Party attendees reported Devin lingering near the drinks table and making several trips to the bathroom. One student later told investigators that she saw him carrying a crushed plastic bag as he exited the restroom, though she did not report concern at the time. Prescription logs confirmed Devin had been given Zolpidem for insomnia following a prior injury. When the kitchen briefly cleared, Devin added crushed Zolpidem tablets to a beer he believed Eric would drink. The bitterness of the medication was partially masked by the beer's flavor. Guests later reported that Eric mentioned the drink tasting unusual, but continued consuming it. Over the next hour, witnesses observed him becoming increasingly sluggish, though the symptoms resembled ordinary intoxication. Shortly before midnight, Eric decided to leave. Several guests saw him retrieve his keys and move unsteadily toward the door. Despite suggestions that he stay, he walked to his car. Street cameras showed his vehicle drifting slightly within its lane as he left the neighborhood. Approximately 20 minutes later, a passing driver reported a car against a tree on a rural road outside town. Responders found Eric deceased in the driver's seat. The coroner identified fatal blunt force trauma, and toxicology showed zolpidem levels far above therapeutic use, prompting investigators to review events at the party. Witness statements described Devon lingering near the drinks, and a search of his home uncovered a partially empty zolpidem prescription bottle. Devon admitted adding crushed tablets to Eric's beer, claiming he intended only to impair him. The medical examiner cited collision injuries with drug impairment as a contributing factor. Forensic analysis matched the zolpidem to Devon's prescription, leading to charges of reckless endangerment, resulting in death. It was September 8, 2018, in a rural neighborhood outside Bakersfield, California, where properties had wide yards, aging outbuildings, and sheds used for storing tools or farm equipment. Residents had recently reported a rise in petty theft involving missing power tools and lawn equipment. Some reinforced locks on their storage buildings, while others installed new security cameras to monitor activity around their property. William Miller, 50, worked as a mechanic and stored thousands of dollars worth of tools in a backyard shed. Over the previous months, he had grown increasingly convinced that someone in the neighborhood, specifically his neighbor Gavin, was entering his yard at night. Co-workers later told investigators that William frequently complained about Gavin, insisting he was responsible for several missing items despite having no proof. Neighbors described the two men as openly hostile, exchanging accusations and arguing across their property lines. William's family reported he spent long evenings researching property defense methods, often focusing on improvised devices intended to injure trespassers. 10-year-old Isaiah Davis, Gavin's nephew, lived 3 blocks away, but regularly visited his uncle after school. Neighbors knew Isaiah as a quiet child who often played soccer in Gavin's yard or along the gravel alley behind several homes in the area. He had no involvement in the dispute between the two adults. In late August, the conflict escalated when William confronted Gavin in the street, accusing him of stealing a tool set. Witnesses said the argument became heated, with William shouting a threat that he intended to stop Gavin one way or another. Investigators later found online purchases and browser searches made shortly after this confrontation, including guides on mechanical traps and improvised tripwire mechanisms. Within days, William constructed a deadly device inside his shed. He mounted a 12-gauge shotgun to the interior wall, secured at chest height, and tied a nylon tripwire through small metal eyelets so the gun would fire the moment the door opened more than an inch. The shotgun's muzzle pointed directly at the doorway, and no warning signs were posted. Forensic technicians later determined the trap was intentionally calibrated to strike an adult entering head-on, a configuration consistent with targeting Gavin. On the afternoon of the incident, Isaiah and his cousin lost a soccer ball during play. Witness accounts and tire track analysis indicated the ball rolled toward William's yard, where it came to rest near the side of the shed. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed Isaiah crossing onto William's property to retrieve it. He walked toward the shed, scanning the ground before reaching for the door, likely believing the ball had rolled inside or gotten stuck against the structure. When Isaiah pulled the door open, the tripwire triggered instantly. The shotgun discharged at close range, striking him in the chest. The impact forced him backward onto the dirt. A neighbor gardening nearby heard the shot and found Isaiah unresponsive. Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes, but he had died instantly from the wound. Deputies photographed the trap, documenting the mounted shotgun, tripwire path, and lack of warnings. A search warrant for William's home uncovered ammunition, notes referencing online trap designs, and searches tied to his feud with Gavin. Investigators concluded the device was built specifically to injure Gavin, not an unknown intruder. The medical examiner listed cause of death as a close-range shotgun wound. Forensic analysis confirmed the shell-matched ammunition stored in William's home. William was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, possession of an illegal destructive device, and reckless endangerment. Authorities later issued public advisories emphasizing that such devices are illegal because they cannot distinguish targets and often turn revenge into tragedy for unintended victims. It was November 3rd, 2019, at a fourth-floor apartment balcony in downtown Austin, Texas. Music and conversation from inside the unit, mixed with traffic noise below. The balcony's older railing remained only 36 inches high, creating conditions where physical confrontations carried elevated risk, especially in crowded social settings. Yancey Moore, 19, was a college sophomore known among classmates for impulsive reactions during interpersonal disputes. Friends said she often escalated arguments when she felt slighted or ignored. Academic records showed prior disciplinary discussions regarding disruptive behavior. Devin Travis, 19, attended the same university and had known Yancey since freshman orientation. Classmates described her as socially active, but sometimes insensitive during disagreements. Her involvement with a student Yancey liked intensified strain between them. Device logs later confirmed she had communicated with mutual friends about recent tension. Tension had been rising for weeks. Several acquaintances told investigators that Yancey repeatedly blamed Devin for undermining her attempts at a relationship. Witnesses said resentment escalated after Devin began dating the student in question. Multiple attendees later recalled Yancey arriving at the gathering intent on confronting her. Party attendance logs and phone footage established a clear timeline. The initial confrontation began inside the apartment, where witnesses noticed raised voices, but assumed it was a routine disagreement. As more guests became aware of the argument, several started recording, recognizing the escalation. The confrontation shifted toward the balcony as Yancey followed Devin through the living room. Attendees described Devin attempting to disengage, gesturing toward the doorway, and shifting her stance away from the railing. Crowding inside the apartment limited space for intervention, and those near the balcony entrance later said they moved toward the scene only after noticing both women step outside. On the balcony, footage captured Yancey closing the distance as she continued pressing Devin. The narrow space left limited room for repositioning. Devin turned partially toward the apartment interior, aligning her lower back against the low railing. Witnesses inside saw the posture change, but could not reach the door fast enough to intervene. In the decisive moment, Yancey pushed Devin with both hands. Investigators later analyzed phone recordings and determined the movement produced enough force to overcome the low railing's height. Devin lost balance and fell backward over the edge. Guests inside saw her drop from view and reacted immediately as the argument ended in seconds. Residents called emergency services after hearing the impact, and responders found Devin deceased from blunt force trauma consistent with a 4-story fall. Investigators reviewed multiple videos showing the confrontation and confirmed Yancey initiated the shove. The railing was intact but below modern safety standards, and witness accounts indicated Devin attempted to step away. Forensic analysis ruled out structural failure, and digital messages revealed Yancey had planned to confront her over personal tension. Investigators determined she acted with disregard for the risks. Yancey was arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter, prompting safety reviews of older balcony railings. It was December 18, 2022, in a suburban neighborhood outside Phoenix, Arizona. Cool winter air settled over rows of single-story houses built in the 1980s, many with narrow brick chimneys that predated updated safety standards. With most residents traveling for the holidays, several homes sat dark and unattended for days at a time. 19-year-old Roldan Clark had taken his recent breakup badly. Friends reported he often talked about feeling disrespected and humiliated after Sherlyn Cruz ended their relationship and blocked him on every platform. His family later told investigators he struggled with rejection and frequently reacted with anger when he felt slighted. Digital records showed searches focused on retaliation, along with posts expressing growing resentment towards Sherlyn in the weeks leading up to the incident. Sherlyn, also 19, had returned to her parents' home for winter break. After repeated unwanted messages from Roldan, she blocked all contact. Mutual friends said she was unsettled by his fixation and relieved to be home while her parents were away for several days visiting relatives. Activity logs confirmed she had no communication with him since the breakup. Investigators later determined that Roldan learned the house would be empty during the week. In the days before the incident, his browsing history showed searches about entering alarm-secured homes, bypassing doors and windows, and identifying interior weak points. he also viewed posts discussing vandalizing personal belongings as retaliation after a breakup. Authorities concluded he planned to enter Sherlin's home to damage or remove her possessions as an act of revenge. On the evening of December 18th, Roldan parked several blocks away, avoiding cameras mounted near the main street. Footprints later confirmed he walked toward Sherlin's backyard. Attempts to open doors and windows left no marks, indicating he abandoned those routes quickly due to the home's alarm sensors. Behind the shed, he found a ladder and carried it to the roof. The chimney's top opening measured roughly 13 inches square. Investigators noted soot transfer consistent with Roldan lowering himself feet first. As he descended, the shaft narrowed toward the damper to approximately 10 by 10 inches. When his shoulders reached the constricted area, he became lodged. Evidence showed he struggled to free himself, but his arms were pinned against his sides, preventing upward or downward movement. Compression from the tight brick walls restricted his ability to expand his chest. Forensic specialists concluded that Roldan likely lost consciousness within minutes due to positional asphyxia. The chimney's depth and acoustics would have muted any sounds he made. With the house empty, there was no possibility of discovery. Sherlin's family returned 3 days later. They noticed the interior unusually cold and detected a faint odor near the fireplace. When an attempt to light a fire resulted in poor airflow, they contacted a chimney service. Technicians clearing debris discovered Roldan's body wedged above the damper. Responders extracted him using specialized tools. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as positional asphyxia from confinement within the chimney. Investigators found no intent to steal valuables. Instead, digital history confirmed Roldan intended to vandalize Sherlin's belongings as retaliation for the breakup. The death was ruled accidental, though tied directly to a failed revenge attempt. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.